Hey everyone, we are back with another Penny Dreadful review, and tonight we're reviewing Season 2, Episode 7, titled Little Scorpion. If you are not fully caught up on Penny Dreadful, you're going to want to skip this video because everything we talk about from this point forward is going to be a spoiler. And if you're not watching Penny Dreadful at all,
start watching it.
Start watching it, because it's awesome. Very first thing that happens in this episode is Ethan talks to Sembene about what Sembene witnessed at the end of last episode, and he finds out that he is in fact a werewolf, and Sembene has witnessed something similar before.
Now, I suspect that Ethan has actually known he was a werewolf, but just wasn't, like, positive.
Or he knew something was wrong with him.
He obviously knew something was wrong with him. I think he suspected he was a werewolf. Yeah. But I don't think he was absolutely positive. He probably was like, werewolves don't exist. And then after he meets this group, he's like, well, shit, maybe they do. Well, maybe I'm a werewolf. Yeah. Damn it. Type thing.
The werewolves don't exist. Vampires exist. Oh, shit, maybe werewolves exist.
Oh, crap, I'm a werewolf.
Yeah. So that inner thought process of Ethan has finally, he's found out exactly what he is. But Sembene offers him some encouragement.
Yeah.
He says, maybe this isn't a curse. Maybe it's a blessing. Maybe, God made you this way for a reason. And I think Ethan, that kind of made him feel a little bit better about the situation, although he does still feel enormous guilt over the people he's killed.
Yeah, and he feels like a monster.
Yeah.
He's mentioned numerous times that he's a monster, or he has a monster inside him, so...
Even in this episode, after talking to Sembene, he still refers to himself as a monster, or his inner monster. So I think Sembene's words did help, but Ethan's just not there yet.
Yes, I agree. Sir Malcolm is no longer Sir Malcolm.
Yeah.
He is being controlled by the fetish, because he doesn't believe Vanessa's story of what happened at the ball, and that's not Sir Malcolm. Sir Malcolm believes her 100%. He tells her it was womanly problems.
The great thing about that scene is Dr. Frankenstein calls out Sir Malcolm on it. He's like, you seriously don't believe her?
Yeah.
After all the things that she can do, and you don't believe, he looks at him like he's insane. And speaking of Dr. Frankenstein, Vanessa decides she needs to GTFO out of that house.
Yeah.
Because everybody from that house except for Ethan and Sembene was there at the ball, and she was still attacked. They could not protect her. So she decides that nobody can protect her. She needs to leave. But Ethan's like, no, I'm going too.
I think actually more so than not being able to protect her, all those people were there and she was attacked. And they've been worried from the beginning of an infiltration. So none of those people can go with her because they could be the infiltrate.
Right, infiltrator.
Yeah, infiltrator.
So Vanessa and Ethan, they leave. And the only person Vanessa tells is Dr. Frankenstein. And I think that's going to end up being a mistake.
I don't think telling Dr. Frankenstein was the mistake. I think
wrote it down.
Writing it down to give to Dr. Frankenstein, that's the mistake. I'm still not so sure she should have told anybody whatsoever, but it makes sense. And Dr. Frankenstein seems the least likely to be...
the infiltrator?
Yeah, the infiltrator. So...
I think I agree with that. I think he's the least likely to be the infiltrator, but I think he's the most likely to crack under pressure.
Yes, I agree.
So I think this could totally come around to bite her, and we'll see if it does in the next episode.
Not only was telling him a mistake, but where she went was kind of a mistake, because she just told all of them the story of the cut witch, and then she goes back to that house. To me, I'm like, well, she just told me a story about this, so let's go check that house. That would be my first guess.
So Ethan and Vanessa go to the cabin that was owned by the cutwife, and the entire time they're there, they're just bonding. And for about half the episode, it almost feels like a romance story. Mm-hmm. Until they share this moment right after lightning strikes the house, it catches on fire, and they're able to put the fire out, and they have this really brief moment where it seems like they're going to get together. They share a kiss, and it's like right there, and she pushes him away, and she's like, no, we're dangerous. And I don't know, at that moment, I thought maybe that was her fetish coming through, because her voice seemed to change just a little bit.
I almost wonder if she's afraid to get that close with anybody because, you know, she is pursued. She has these witches after her. Anybody who's close to her is in harm's way. Now, he's already in harm's way because he's working on the case with her, but pursuing anything further could make it worse, and bad things just keep happening to her. Maybe she kind of thinks she doesn't deserve to be happy.
And while they're together, they're out, and they run into the guy from a couple episodes ago who burned the Cutwife alive. And he's there, and he's out, presumably hunting. He has his hunting dogs with him. And they have a bit of an altercation. You know, he talks about, you know, coming back to see her again. And Ethan starts to step up to him, but Vanessa stops him.
Yeah. And I was kind of a little disappointed that he didn't attempt to sick the dogs on them, or at least on Ethan, because I wanted Ethan to control his dogs in front of him and be like,
that's really,
I
thought that was the direction that scene was going to go, and I was waiting for it, and then it didn't happen. I was like, oh, well, man, that was
disappointing.
It was a missed opportunity as a writer right there.
Because he could have had just one of the dogs go after him, and Ethan just looks at him, and the dog backs down and, like, almost to an alpha. You know, like, oh, this is the alpha of the pack, and just kind of backs down. Like, that would have been so cool, but no, they missed it.
Even as they were approaching, I was expecting the dogs to be timid and a little bit of afraid of Ethan because he's a werewolf. He is the alpha. So I expected the demeanor of the dogs to change right away. So, Ethan and Vanessa, they talk about it, and Ethan's trying to talk her out of killing this guy.
Now, Ethan is trying to talk her out of it because he's killed people. He fought in the Indian Wars. I think he carries that around with him. He carries the weight of all those deaths with him, and he doesn't want her to have that, which is just kind of another thing, like another aspect of their bonding is he doesn't want her to feel how he feels. Yeah. So he's trying to protect her by convincing her not to kill somebody. Even though he totally has plans to go kill him himself. Yeah. Like, he leaves to go out there and kill him. But, of course, you know, she gets the crazy book.
I think he's, you know, going, I already carry all this weight. Mm-hmm. One more isn't going to bother me at all. And he even tells her, he's like, after your third one, it's nothing.
Yeah, you don't feel it anymore.
So he knows he can handle it, and he doesn't want her to have to handle it. So he goes out there fully planning to murder this guy. But while he's out, she gets the devil book and starts doing an incantation. And wow, that was a freaky scene.
Yeah, she's so good at scenes like that. Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
How about that? How would you like to be an actress and like your specialty is playing a possessed person? But what she does is she makes the dogs turn on their master and they eat him alive.
Yes.
And holy shit, what a way to go.
Yeah.
Because he takes them out to feed them, because he mentioned when they had their little altercation in the woods, you know, the way you break an animal is to feed it by hand. That way they know you're in charge of the food. And so he takes them out there to feed them, and he's throwing little bits of meat out, and they turn around, and they're like, dinner, and they jump on him.
Yeah.
And so imagine the utter fear that he must have been feeling knowing that these animals who he thought he had utter control of turned on him. Switching to Lily. Lily and Frankenstein, they're home, and Lily's getting ready for a date, and Frankenstein is clearly not happy about it.
Yes.
But she's like, Victor, you can't keep me cooped up in here all the time. So she's starting to rebel a little bit from his control, but she goes on a date with Dorian Gray.
Yeah. And that doesn't really say what they did for the majority of their date, but they do happen by the wax museum. And they go in, and of course, John Clare sees them. Yeah. And so you know he's going to confront Frankenstein about this. But what was Frankenstein to do? She doesn't know that she's dead and then has been resurrected. Although I do think Dorian's starting to suspect it if he doesn't already know that she's Brona. I don't know if he knows exactly what's going on, but I think he knows she's Brona.
Yeah.
And I don't know where his mind's going with that, because
I think he's more intrigued at this point than anything, because I think he does recognize her as this woman that he knew, but I think he's like just trying to piece it together, because he keeps dropping little hints of, are you sure you're not familiar with this? Are you sure you're not familiar with that? So I think he's trying to egg her on a little bit and maybe pull something, out of her mind or remind her or whatever. But she's just not making the connections that he wants her to make or he's trying to get her to make.
Yeah, he is probably utterly confused because I imagine at first he just assumed she reinvented herself and is now trying to infiltrate high society because she was very low. I mean, she was a prostitute, so she was low on the economical scale. And now she's pretty high up there. I mean, she's dressing very nicely. Her hair is much nicer. I mean, it's styled and everything. So that's what I would imagine his first thought was, oh, she's changed everything and she's trying to infiltrate high society and be a lady. But then as he's talking to her, she's not recognizing anything. She's not acting like she recognizes him because she doesn't. And I think he's just confused and fascinated.
Yeah, I think probably fascinated more than confused.
Yeah, he's just like, what game is she at?
Yeah.
He's trying to figure her out. And that could be Frankenstein's downfall.
Yeah. But after their date, she's in a coach on the way home, and she sees like a gentleman's club or something on the sidewalk, and she tells the driver to stop, and she jumps out, and she goes into this like it's like a gentleman's pub.
Yeah.
Lots of wealthy gentlemen there, drinking their drinks and smoking their cigars and talking about smart things.
Just like that.
Yeah, and she goes and sits at the bar next to a guy, and he's like, well, hey, because the only reason a woman would be in there would be if she was a prostitute.
Yes.
Looking for a John.
And so I'm thinking she sits down and he's like, oh, hey, here's a high-end prostitute.
Yeah.
Let's go get some.
Now, at this point, I think some of Brona's memories or emotions or impulses or whatever are starting to bleed out of Lily, because that is something that Brona would do if she had the means to dress that way. She would go to a high-end gentleman's club and get one of those Johns.
I'm sure they pay better.
Yeah, exactly.
So she does go upstairs with him, and they start doing it, and then she strangles him.
Yeah, and I think that's would have been one of Brona's impulses, because she was a very low-end call girl. So I imagine some of her clients weren't the nicest guys, and the impulse to fight back or to kill them had to have come through at some point.
Yeah.
And I think it actually manifested with Lily, because we know John Clare has superhuman strength. There's no reason to think Lily doesn't, and it kind of shows because she strangles this large man with her bare hands.
Yeah, without any trouble whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it almost makes me wonder, Frankenstein made John Clare, and John Clare is not conventionally attractive. He's got scars on his face. He doesn't have part of his hair on one side of his head. But he's a genuinely nice person. Mm-hmm. Now, he did a much better job with Lily. She looks almost exactly the same as she did before. But it's seeming that she's not so nice. So I'm wondering, is that the difference between the two personalities of the people? Or if the process he used in order to bring her back differed in the process he used with John Clare and thus created a monster?
Now, John Clare has no qualms about killing at all.
Yeah, but he's a nicer person.
Yeah, we've seen him interact with Vanessa a few times, and he is actually very, very polite, and he's very articulate. Mm-hmm. And I think he actually is a good person at his heart. He's just been traumatized and shunned by society, so that will, cause some animosity.
Another theory I had was perhaps the process of bringing the dead person back to life gets rid of their impulse control. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of John Clare's kills, even though they were justified, it was an impulse. Mm-hmm. Like when he walks in and sees him with his new monster and he shoves his hand through it, that was probably an impulse, and instead of squashing it, he just did it. So maybe there's something wrong with their impulse control. Maybe
Right.
This is something that Brona's thought numerous times as she's been with John's, and has been able to control it, and now she's not able to because she lacks her impulse control.
Right. You can see on her face as she's strangling him, she's enjoying it. So I'm thinking Lily may be becoming a serial killer.
Yeah, I agree. I think she is. I don't think this is the last time she kills somebody. So there's just a little scene of Ferdinand and Dr. Frankenstein, and they're looking at the little artifact pieces and they're translating it and stuff like that. And Ferdinand mentions that wolf is a repeating theme. It's repeated numerous times throughout here. And in the way he was saying it, it almost made me wonder if the wolf is the one who's going to save Vanessa from the devil, meaning Ethan is going to save Vanessa from the devil. And there was also an interesting bit about how the devil sees Vanessa as kind of like his wife, and he's going to get her or he's going to hurt her, but he's going to have her regardless.
I think we pretty much covered everything for this episode. If we missed anything, let us know in the comments and talk to us. What did you think of the episode? Do you think Lily is going to become a serial killer? I sure do.
What do you think's up with Lily and John Clare? What theory are you thinking for them, especially to explain Lily, because that was very out of character for Brona. So.
And how far is Vanessa going to fall? She has used the devil book, so every time, the cut wife told her, you use it, you get further away from God. So how far is she going to fall before they can bring her back?
And can they bring her back?
Can they? Yeah.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. And on Fridays, we do a topic of the week video. So if you have any suggestions for that, put that down in the comments below. We'll look through all of them, choose the one we think we can make the best video for, and that is what we will post on Friday.
Thank you very much for watching. We will see you next time.